Hey everybody, welcome to TBC Plays. I'm the Brit Canuck, a long-time EQ and MMO player, and we now know a new TLP is heading our way in 2022, so I'm carrying on my series of videos where I show you what to hunt, where to camp, what loot to aim for, and how to complete those hunter achievements. Today we are looking at Lower Guk, a zone which again is going to be popular on any TLP during the leveling progress. It's a zone where a lot of people are going to spend their 30s and 40s in. It's a very old school kind of dungeon. It's very narrow, kind of claustrophobic, a bit of a maze, which I think actually is somewhat of the appeal of the zone. The zone, as we know, is the home of the Froglogs. Lower Guk is kind of split. There's two halves. You've got your undead side, which is filled of some rather grisly looking froglogs, and on the live side is the home of some rather nicer looking froglogs and some other races such as minotaurs. Then when I was looking up the history of the zone, and I'm not really a huge lore hound, I know little bits about the lore, but I actually found it kind of interesting reading up on how Lower Guk came to be, and as we know, the city of the Froglogs. But it was originally inhabited by a bunch of rather nasty trolls, and the Froglogs, led by a rather awesomely named Hoptor Fagolum, didn't like this very much, decided to kick out the trolls. But as the trolls were leaving, the troll shaman popped up, cast a curse, which caused half the Froglogs to die. This got the attention of Innothule, and sensing a theme here with the gods that they like to interfere with a lot of these things. He resurrected Hoptor, who became the Ghoul Lord, who resides in the depths of Lower Guk, and he decided to make an undead army, which is where we are at today. Now, on a typical TLP, this zone can comfortably hold 4, maybe 5 groups xping, but on a TLP we do have the options of the pick zones. So usually when you come to Guk, there's normally 6, 7, 8 different versions of Lower Guk to choose from. I typically come to Lower Guk around level 30. You might be able to get in a little bit earlier if you're playing, say, a cleric or an enchanter, or maybe even a warrior. And one of the cool things I like about this zone, that it's really the first zone where factions, you start seeing factions. You kill enough of the undead froglogs and the live froglogs will actually start to like you, not kill you on sight, which can be handy when navigating through Upper Guk. And also there is a quest later on for the Wood Elf illusion, so getting that faction here can speed up that a little later down the line. With the zone located just off Innothule Swamp past Upper Guk, if you're a good aligned melee class, just remember to take a bind at the southern Desert of Ro Eldon camp, and evil melee can bind in Grob. Now, to get there, this is just starting off in Lower Guk. The easiest way to get to the Lower Guk zone line is basically to always turn right and you'll get there eventually. If you probably, when you go into zone, nothing in Upper Guk should really pose any kind of problem. If you haven't hunted here before, you probably won't even be KOS, but I always just chuck an invis on anyway, just in case. This is the route I always take to get to Upper Guk, through the spider tunnels, where the crocs spawn. And again, if you always turn right, you'll get there eventually, but you just follow the path around. It's fairly linear, it's a one-way path, and you will exit the spider area into the Scryer's room. And it's probably helpful if I turn the map on so you can actually see where I'm going. Probably should have done that from the start, but from here you can see you just kind of follow it down and around, and then when you start seeing frogs, you know you've come to the right place. And this room right here is the Froglog Scryer camp. We'll definitely cover it when I go over Upper Guk, and it's a fairly popular camp on any TLP server. But again, you just kind of follow the path down. If you're never too sure, you always get lost, so stick to the right wall and you will get to Lower Guk no problem. Some of these floors have a mechanic where they are slippy as well. It shouldn't cause you any problem. There's no like pits at the end of them. Yeah, this floor right here, you just kind of glide down and then you re-enter this little spider platforming section. Spiders will bother you. Just jump over the log and then hang a right. And you get here, the rest of the way is a breeze. You might encounter a group camping right outside this zone line. That's fairly common. You run in and here you are at the typical Lower Guk zone line. There are others, but this is the one where most people come to. Alright, so now I'm going to look at the camps, or the most popular camps to gain experience at in Lower Guk. So when you first zone in, at the typical entrance, this is where you will be. Now, this is probably going to be your first dungeon of this scale, and the map inside the game is going to look really confusing. It's going to look really big. There's paths that crisscross over each other, different levels. It can be pretty difficult to work out where you are. There is a button on the map called Hype Filter that will kind of only show the level that you're on. It's not fantastic, it doesn't work brilliantly, but once you get down to the lower floors, it does make things a lot easier. And the zone is kind of split into two levels. You got your undead side, which is typically on the right, and then the live side, which is going to be on like the left of the map. So the first camp that you will come to, between level like 28, 29, 30 up to about 34, is called the bedroom camp. Now to get there, you will encounter a couple of live frog logs right here, and if you KOS, they will probably attack you. So it's generally advisable to clear these, or hopefully they're down if you're running through, because as soon as you turn this corner, you're going to start to encounter undead frog logs. And being undead, they will see through any regular invisibility. To get past them undetected, you need to have invisibility versus undead. The problem is, if you have that on too soon, the live frogs will see you and still attack. Now you can get invisibility versus undead pots fairly cheaply, and I would always carry a few of those on you to make this run a lot easier. Now there you go, there's the first undead mob with his guts hanging out, as they all do, quite grisly compared to the rather cute live side frogs. You just head down this corridor here, and what we do is we jump in the water and you swim round, keep going round, all the way around until you get right around here, and then you're going to pop up. Now if your group's moving in, there's mobs right here in the bedroom. This is the bedroom camp, so they will aggro you as soon as you pop up if you've not got invis versus undead, and you need to be ready to tackle them. There's about 3 mobs that will aggro. Now if you're coming into Lower Guk through that entrance, that will be your typical way in, and you'll come in there every single time, and you'll come down this way into the bedroom every single time. The bedroom is an interesting camp because it can get trained fairly frequently, and there are a lot of like undead frog logs around. You've got these bats up here as well. These are your typical pulls that you will be fighting. Now the undead will all social, and by social I mean they will assist each other. So if you aggro one of them, they will all come running. And then around here you've got some more spiders, which will again social and help each other out. This room's got 4 or 5 in, so these can all come in parts. So either your monk is going to be splitting them, or you're going to have an enchanter who can cast their crowd control abilities. Now the bedroom camp is kind of like a big circle all around here. There's lots of mobs that you can gather. There are those gargoyles. I love gargoyles in this game, and you should always kill them because their eyes sell to vendors for about 8 plat each, and they can drop them fairly reliably and sometimes in multiples because they have 2 eyes. So always make sure you're killing them. The only downside with bedroom camp is there's only one named who spawns just behind us, the ritualist, and we'll look at what he drops in a bit. This is the pull that either makes or breaks a bedroom group, is these skeletons right here, because there's 5 of them and they will all come at once. So make sure before you pull those that you are ready to tackle them and you got your crowd control. But the run is fairly straightforward. You come into this big center room again and into the bedroom. In terms of positioning, what I always like to do is have the tank a little bit out front so that they can tag mobs as they run in, and have the healer kind of sat on this bed so that they can see everything that's going on. Just be mindful about respawns in the room, especially if you have a big pull that's about to come in. Now the next camp that we're going to head to. We always head in from the bedroom, so once you're through these camps, you pretty much know it for every other camp in the zone. So you're just going to come along here. Hopefully you have Invis versus Undead, so you can get past those skeletons if there's no group at bedroom, and you are greeted by these two fine undead frogs here and into this castle kind of area. Then this next camp is called Asup, which I promise is not named after a bad late 80s rap song, but is named because of the two names that spawn in there. Now, I don't rate this really as an XP camp. The mobs are between kind of levels 30 to 37, and primarily it's a loot camp because of the mobs that spawn here. On Mischief, we saw that there was quite often people permacamping this just so they can get the names, and for XP it's not fantastic. It's pretty long pulls up the ladders, and you're competing with, say, the bedroom group, and if there's a group downstairs at the next camp. Where are you pulling from? You're pulling from all around the castle. Up here in these kind of battlements there's a few spawns, and we'll just jump back down and look around. Here we go, and there's a few more like spawns all kind of nestled away. You're going to want to try and get some mobs from this middle floor, and again you're probably going to be competing against a group that's going to be downstairs to do that. And like I said, these are all fairly long pulls, so that's why I typically don't try to get a group at Asup unless there's nothing else going, because your XP is going to be fairly slow, but you will get some chance at a decent loot, especially from the assassin, which we will cover in a little bit. Alright, the next camp that we'll cover is the Xping Sav camp. So starting from the bridge does past bedroom. This is the easiest way to go to it, which is pretty much the same as going to the Asup camp, except just before the ladder we turn down here and look to our left, and there's a gap. And splat, there you go, you're right there. This is the camp. If you're against the wall here, you are safe. Nothing that is pathing will aggro you. It will always go around to the other side of the pillar, so you can just chill out and wait for your group mates to come. Now from there, you'll be pulling mobs all the way down here into the executioner's room. This is another one of those grisly rooms in Everquest, and there's some slabs of what looks like meat on the table there. And over here as well, this is the sage's room, and there's a fake wall with a bunch more wizards in that will cast, so make sure if you're pulling those that you're going to be breaking line of sight so that they run all the way back to you instead of stopping and casting. You will also be pulling from over this side. There's lots of mobs that path around, but down here we have the Savant camp as well, and there's 3 or 4 mobs that spawn in and around that room. Like I said, it's a much better camp for XP. The mobs are typically around the same level as the Asup camp, maybe they go slightly higher, but this is a much better XP camp and also decent shot at loot. Now, before we look at the next camp, I just want to show you how you get back up, and this is how you do it. You're starting off on that floor for the Xping Swamp camp is. You're coming up to the middle floor. Like I said, have the height filter set on the map and it will guide you around. And when you get back up here, this is the floor with the ladder up to the Asup camp, and there you go, there's the bridge that leads back to the bedroom camp, which is really handy to know, especially if you don't have someone who can evac you to the zone line. The next camp we'll look at is what we call the Hamlord camp, and to get there, just jump off on the bridge, past bedroom, and into this corridor, which is known as the safe corridor. I don't think it's actually all that safe. It's only called safe room because mobs don't path there. However, people are typically always training or pulling through it, and they will aggro onto you. Now to get to the Hamlord, you just kind of follow the path up. There is a trap here, and what you want to do is keep to the sides of here to get past the trap. But if you fell into it, like here for example, there's a ladder right there that you can climb back up. You'll take no damage, there's no mobs down there, there's nothing to worry about. And you can just follow it round and into this room, and right there along that wall is where we camp the Hamlord. So this is where your group is going to be set up, and this is where your puller is going to be pulling mobs too. Now you've got a lot of mobs to pick from here. You'll be pulling all the way to the north where the Ghoul Lord spawns, and behind this fake wall around the corner you'll see there's a few mobs here, and right here is the Magus room, and there he is. Oh, he's up. And we'll get to his loot. He typically camps fairly regularly because of the robe that he drops. And easy pulls back to the group right there. And all the way up to the Ghoul Lord's room. There's mobs in all these little nooks and crannies, so make sure you're looking and pulling them because they'll aggro. All the way to the highest room and the highest level mobs in the zone, the Ghoul Lord and his little friends, and bring those back. Now the Ghoul Lord who spawns up there is the highest mob in the zone. He drops some fairly nice loot. His rare is probably the best sword for a warrior or tank to have to gain aggro from mobs, so it's definitely high value and you want to make sure you're killing it as soon as it spawns. Some other rooms off to the side up here. You want to swim up this water, just keep spinning around till you get to the top. Is one of those hands again, hidden away, the only one in the zone, but there's a couple of other little mobs there that can drop, the hand drop some loot as well. You just aggro them and run down as fast as you can and back to the camp right there. The other camp that I didn't mention that's down here is the Frenzy camp, and the reason why I didn't mention it is because honestly I don't think it's an XP camp in and of itself. There's just not enough mobs there to, for me and my opinion, to support a group XPing. Now having said that, some fantastic loot drops there, and again some loot that every melee class will want to have, and because the name there drops a haste belt. And it's a shame because if you look at this room, it's a fantastic room. It's really got a really cool vibe going on there, with that blood fountain. Super cool, and it is a fairly long pull, but if you've got a really good group, you can make it back before you start getting respawns. And there's also the Sentinel down here as well, who is another named. And to get back, like I said, it's a fairly long pull, so just make sure you're prepared. Also, sometimes some groups at the XE camp, if they're a bit short of mobs, will start pulling this way, or even might tag one of your pulls, so be mindful about that. Now, the Hamlord camp will get you all the way to 50, but please don't do that. It really starts slowing down after like 45, 46, and hopefully by the time you're leveling around that range, the hole would have opened up on your server. Now, a lot of people will get through the zone leveling almost exclusively on the undead side, but there is a camp that sometimes I like to go to on the live side if I want to mix things up a little bit. And this is how you will get to it. So from the bridge, you just open the door, drop down the ladder and follow the path around. It's linear. Be wary of this room, especially if you're KOS, because these will all aggro you at the same time. And you just follow the path down. Now here, you've got to be a little bit careful because there is a trap that you have to jump over. However, almost guaranteed, one of your group will fall into it. And you fall into this pit where there's usually a Minotaur named can spawn. And you get out and climb up, and there's a whole bunch of Minotaurs here. And this is where my friend Rasta spawns. If you're a monk, you'll be very familiar with this spot, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. But otherwise, there's lots of Minotaurs here, and it's kind of nice to get some variety in mobs sometimes. So to get to the camp we're looking for, the way I like to go is down this really, really long tunnel. You might encounter a couple of pathers, but nothing you won't be able to handle. Like I said, just a few Minotaurs wandering up and down, and you follow this round. And the reason why I like to come this way, because at the end of this corridor is a mob. It's a unique mob in the zone. Right there, you can't miss him, and that's an evil eye. Really cool mob, really cool model, really like it, kind of freaky. But he's watching out from this little alcove, and I always kill him as you're passing because he drops a weight reduction bag, and you can never have enough of those. Even if you've got the store bags, I always stop and kill him to grab a bag. They are low, so you can only get one, and usually by the time you've done it Guk, everyone in your group would have had one, or at least seen one pass by them. So carry on round, it brings you out at the Crusader camp. Sometimes you see people camping here. It's not typically as common because, again, there is a lot of mobs in and around the little Crusader castle, but aside from that, not really. So once you've killed through there, your pulls are starting to get very, very long. Instead, I like to come along here, follow the path round. It's not very far on from here, but this brings you out to where I like to set up to kill if I'm doing the live side, and this is where the Froglog Noble can spawn. And I like to set up here. It's a pretty good place because if there's no competition, you can pull all the way down to the Froglog King's Room, and you can pull the Crusader Castle as well fairly easily. There's lots of mobs around, and over here the mobs are going to vary. They tend to be a little bit higher than on the undead side, but they tend to be around 37 to 42 I think, and the King's Room a little bit higher on average. I think they're only in the 40s, with the king being the highest mob there. And to get to the King's Room, you just kind of follow this round. You'll encounter lots of frogs, and looking ahead straight at you, it will be the Froglog King or his placeholder. And right here is the placeholder, and there's a bunch of frogs in there around the little throne, and there's some behind up in the windows as well, and that's where the named tactician can spawn. Alright, next up we're going to have a look at what loot can drop in Lower Guk. Now this is the first zone that we've looked at where actually some really good loot for Classic will drop. So I'm not going to go through every drop from every mob, otherwise we'll be here way too long. First up, the reanimated hand. His common drop is the bracer. You'll be seeing a lot of those. It's alright. The ring is slightly better, and usually at this level it's a good item for any tank, warrior or shadow knight. Yeah, the magic is a bit of a downside, but like everything in EQ, there's always a balance to be had. And you can find this hand over by the Hamlord camp. Also at the Hamlord camp is the Archmagus, who was typically always camped on previous TLPs like Aradun, not so much because of the rule set of Mischief. His common drop are the pants, they're not very good. Everyone usually is after his robe, and it's a decent robe until you get the one from either Plane of Hate or Plane of Fear. Now while we're at the Hamlord camp, we'll have a look at the Ghoul Lord. His common drop is a helmet. It's alright, you'll be seeing a lot of those. It has some AC and some HP, so usually it vendors for a little bit of plat because it's so common. But what everybody wants is the sword, the short sword of Yukisha. Now the stats are alright, but what really makes this such a valuable item for any tank in Classic is the rock effect that it has, and a proc is something that has a chance to go off upon hit, and this one does a direct damage of 75 damage, but what's important here is the stun element, because the stun will generate a lot of hate and a lot of aggro towards the tank when it lands. So any tank worth his salt in Classic will have two of these, one in each hand, probably with a stun augment as well attached to them, which you can add on a TLP. Now these swords early on will probably sell for 2 chrono each. After a week or two they'll probably drop to 1 chrono. That's usually what happens, but they are very good swords. Anyone who's rolling a tank will certainly want one, so it's something that if it drops, make sure you are rolling for it. Alright, next we'll look at some more awesome loot, and that comes from the Frenzied Ghoul near Hamlord. Now the Frenzied Ghoul pretty close to the Hamlord camp. His common drops the ring. It's not very good. What everybody wants is the sash, the flowing black silk sash. And you might say, but TBC, it has no stats. But that doesn't matter for this sash, because what's important is the haste that's attached to it. Haste means you're going to be swinging your arms faster and hitting the mob more, which means you're doing more damage, which means you're killing faster, which means you're getting more XP. Everybody that's a melee will want to have a haste item, and this is the easiest one to get, which you will probably have until you can replace it with a raid item such as the Cloak of Flames, which drops from Lord Nagathon. And the sash is an important item, especially for monks and rogues, because it's their bread and butter in dealing damage, but every melee class will probably want one. Everyone always curses when the bard is the first one to get one in the group, and that's just sometimes how it goes. If not, you can probably pick one up for 1 or 2 chrono early on. They drop fairly regularly. Like I said, the Frenzied Ghoul can actually spawn in any of these 3 spots, so he's pretty easy to see and pick up. A lot of people will actually just camp this mob, and that's not totally uncommon, especially on the mobs that drop really good loot. And Ghoul Cavalier, he doesn't drop really good loot actually. He has a sword which has a super cool name called the Dark Reaver, but is actually fairly terrible, so I wouldn't bother with it. Then there's the epaulets, which are actually not terrible for a cleric because they have a lot of whiz, but they actually sell to a vendor for about 200 plat, and they're the common drop, so make sure you pick them up if you see them. At the same camp as the Cavalier, you've got a Ghoul Executioner. He drops this two-handed sword. You'll quite often see Shadow Knights probably using it around this level until they can get something better, and he also drops the Executioner's hood. And the hood isn't bad on something like a monk or a rogue because of the strength and the dex. The axe is the uncommon drop, and as you'll see, it actually has a decent effect of haste, which will make it swing more often. Then we have a Ghoul Sage who drops a couple of nice items for int casters that you can use whilst leveling. Then we have a Ghoul Assassin. Remember I said the Ass Up camp, I don't like to come here when I'm leveling, but on a new TLP you definitely do want to spend some time here just for the loot, and the reason is that's because we get the Guise of the Deceiver. Now this only drops for a set number of weeks on a new server before it's gone forever and it's replaced by the Mask of Deception, which is similar except it's class restricted. Now the thing about the Guise of the Deceiver, you don't get it for the stats, you get it for the effects, and it's not showing on here, but it actually has the effect of turning you into a Dark Elf, and any class, any race can use it from their inventory. You just right click it and it turns you into a Dark Elf, which is why you see tons of Dark Elves running around. Then you have the Supplier who drops the Thick Banded Belt, which is a belt with tons and tons of strength on it. It's just a shame you'd rather have an FBSS there, and a weight reduction bag. Alright, for the Minotaur Elder, the loot you're looking for is his common drop, the Chrysoberyl Talisman. It's a decent neck piece for any whiz casters, that's your clerics, your druids and so on. Pick one of these up, you replace it at the end game, but for now it's good enough, and the mask he drops is a load of rubbish. But thankfully that's his rare drop. The Evil Eye bag from the unique mob in the zone, which I think is so cool. Pick one of these up while you're in Guk, never say no to weight reduction. Still on the life side, a Froglog Young Priest. You wouldn't think this is a named, but it is. And what we're looking for from him is the bracelet. Now the bracelet's pretty decent for any, again, whiz casters while you are leveling up. Leggings are the common drop, and again, not so great. Still on the life side, we've got the Froglog King. Now he drops, his common drop is the crown, and you're going to want to pick one of these up. It's a great resistance piece item with fire and cold resists, and in early EQ, fire and cold really matter when you're raiding. So if you intend to raid, pick one of these up because you will need resistance gear, and this crown will help with fights like Nagathorn and Vox and Talendor and Kunark. And raising your resistance is really important because it means as a DPS, especially melee DPS, you can stay in the fight longer. You're not getting hit as often by the dragon's AoEs, so you don't need to dodge, which means you're doing more DPS, and your healers are not having to spend mana in healing you. So make sure, pick one of these up. And then we have the sword. Probably the best sword outside of the planes for Shadow Knights, Paladins, and for warriors if they're not tanking. You'll replace it from the weapons that drop in Plane of Fear and Plane of Sky when you're raiding those, but for now it's probably the best sword that you can get. Also in the King's Room you've got the Tactician. He drops a nice little book for your int casters, for your primary slot, which has some nice mana and a bit of int on it. I think that also drops in the Geno as well. Let's take a look at the mobs you'll need to kill for the achievement Hunter of the Ruins of Old Guk. And again, a lot of these mobs we've already seen. Start off the Reanimated Hand, guaranteed spawn right near the Hamlord camp. A Ghoul Ritualist who spawns just to the side of the bridge if you were heading from bedroom to the Assup camp. And just past the Ritualist in Assup, we have a Ghoul Supplier and a Ghoul Assassin. A Ghoul Savant, he lives kind of on the middle floor between Assup and Exi. A Ghoul Cavalier, you'll find him at the Exi camp pretty much directly underneath where the Savant spawns. Also, XE is a ghoul sage behind a fake wall. I had the longest time trying to get him to spawn. A ghoul executioner also down at the XE camp. It took me, I think, 5 spawns to see him. A frenzied ghoul, you can see this in the frenzy room at any one of these 3 spawn points. And also the sentinel just to the south. The ghoul archmagus right outside the hamlord camp. And then the big cheese himself, the ghoul lord, right to the north from the hamlord camp, sat up on his throne. Flipping over to the live side, a Minotaur Patriarch. Don't go off where Burrow's map says it spawns, because it can actually spawn at any of the Minotaur spawn points. A Minotaur Elder, he's down in the pit in the Minotaur area. A Froglord that has a cool name that hides at the bottom of his castle. A mob that you don't think is a name but actually is, that is near the entrance to Crusader's hidey hole. A Froglord Noble, and he's going in between Crusader and the Froglord King. The Froglord King, right at the south of the zone on the live side. He has the second coolest throne in the zone. And pro tip, the corridor behind him is actually a zone out to Upper Guk. Froglord Tactician, he's chilling in a window in King's Room. And lastly, a Froglord Herbalist, he's just outside King's Room. You have to go up a ladder, down a little corridor, and he's chilling in here with his books and his potions. Last up, we will look at some of the quests that you can do whilst you are hunting in Lower Guk. First one is Slayer the Slayer. What a cool name for an NPC. And it's probably one of those weird NPCs and weird quests that not many people probably see or do. Now, Slayer is part of the Ivy Edge Gauntlets quest. This is for Rangers out of Kithikor. It's got quite a lot of AC for a ranger item, so if you're a ranger tank wanting some resist, it's probably a decent one to do. But other than that, what a cool name for a frog to be hidden away at the Minotaur caves. And for magicians looking to get ahead of their epic ready for when Kunark launches, Bloodthirsty Ghoul will drop a Torn Page of Magicot number 3. Doesn't drop it every time, but it's common. Oh, I saved the best to last. Raster of Guk. Part of the monk epic, you need to get the idol. Now on TLPs, the shortcut you used to be able to do by killing the guild master in Lake Raft here no longer works, so you have to do this quest now. But I can tell you the hours I wasted trying to do it on Aradun. Hours upon hours upon hours killing the placeholder, trying to get Raster to spawn so that I could kill him and take his idol. He spawns rarely, although it has been increased. It was increased prior to Mischief launching, so it shouldn't take you as long as it took me. And that's about it for Lower Guk. Now, long video, but it is a zone you spend a lot of time in on a new TLP in Classic. There aren't a lot of other options, yet this zone is likely going to take you well from 30, maybe 32, well into the 40s, 44, 45. So you spend a lot of time in this zone. And it's the first zone really where there's some really good loot that you're going to keep until you're ready to raid. It's an interesting zone. It's certainly one of the largest zones you probably would have come across by now, and it can be a bit of a maze the first few times that you come, but you kind of get used to it once you learn how to get to the camps and certainly how to get through bedroom and to the bridge, and it becomes a lot easier then. I like the aesthetic of the zone as well, the split between the live side and the undead side. There's a lot of cool little features that you often don't see if you're just camping at one of the main camps, like in the frenzy room. I love some of the detail that's on, like the blood fountain and stuff like that. It's just really cool and nice little touches that often as Everquest players we don't see when we're just on the experience grind. And there are other zones you can go to as opposed to Lower Guk. Lower Guk just tends to be the most popular. This is where people will come to group and get XP and get some loot on Classic on a TLP server. So chances are you'll be spending a fair amount of time here. So hopefully you find this video useful and helpful to learn how to get to those camps, how to get through Lower Guk, and what loot to aim for. I'm going to continue making these videos in preparation for the new TLP coming later this year. If you enjoyed the video, please feel free to hit that like and subscribe button. It really means the world to me. Leave any comments if you've got any feedback, any comments about what zone you'd like to see me do next. Links are also below for Twitch. I will be streaming Everquest as we build up to the new TLP and practicing and preparing for that, along with some other games. Also links to the Patreon, Twitter and the Discord if you want to come and hang out with us. Other than that, I hope you really enjoyed my in-depth guide on Lower Guk. I am the Brit Canuck, and as always, have yourselves a fantastic day.